to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, your fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with fixation for all things cyclism, symbolism, and patterns.
And I am Moonkittee, your queer femme, poly kitchen witch, and proud geek. Today's topic is have yourself a queery little Yuletide. Happy Yule, Damona!
Blessed Yule. And we have made it to the winter solstice, the
I know.
threshold
That's
of the
officially what, 6 months?
third season. Yep. We're going into our third, like I say season like as if like literal weather seasons
Right.
for our, northern hemisphere lives that we are living and celebrating. So yes, blessed winter solstice.
Blessed solstice.
The shortest of days. You know, the return, the promise of the return of the light.
Right. This is, like I said, this is the night that we know it's the longest night.
Midwinter.
We can make it through. Tomorrow will still be long, but I'll be like a minute shorter. So there's something about that. I love it.
Yeah, for me, I'm like, yeah, it's like the promise of the light returning, but like in bulk is when I really start to see proof of that and really sense that, like, okay, we're gonna make it through winter this time.
No, that makes
sense. And I know
sense.
It sounds like when I say that I'm living some kind of survivalist life, but like for reals, the SAD, the depression with the SADs, it's a real thing.
No, yeah, I get the same thing. SAD is a real thing. The seasonal affective disorder.
Thank you. The words were escaping me, but you captured them beautifully.
Exactly. No, I'm the same way. And it's funny because I know Imulk, is definitely when you start seeing it. But I do feel, and maybe it's purely psychological, but I do actually feel a difference waking up the next day. And maybe again, it's that idea of the hope that maybe even the day is a minute longer or whatever it may be, 30 seconds, however the time breaks down. But I do feel that's like, okay, now I can breathe. It's going to start getting lighter. And that idea of knowing that hope is happening definitely helps. And again,
You've made it through the darkest night.
Exactly.
And sometimes for some, the darkest night is the dark night of the soul journey.
And I don't mind winter. And again, saying that living in California, where for us 40 degrees is cold.
Fair. I don't have to deal with snow.
Exactly. We don't, where we're both located, we don't have to deal with snow. Yes, there is snow in California, believe it or not.
We just don't have to go, we can limit our exposure to it.
Exactly. Most of us can choose to visit the snow should we want to. We don't necessarily have to live in it the way most of the rest of the United States does in different areas.
Well, the northern parts, at least.
Northern parts and such. But yes. So I do fully appreciate that. We do get a lot of wet, and by end of January, February, where you haven't seen the sun in weeks and it's just wet and gray and drizzly. It's definitely something that I start to get that mood affecting.
The constant fogginess. It's foggy and gray. See, I love rainstorms, thunderstorms, but for the Central Valley, we tend to get more of that in the fall and in the spring.
Right.
And sometimes we really, like this past winter, we got really, the one before this one, we got really dumped on rain-wise. But like nobody saw that coming.
Right. And it rarely happens in December.
Right. And I remember specifically because it was over New Year's.
Yeah, because usually for us again, and that makes sense, because if it is the first day of winter, it's not truly midwinter where the worst of the weather actually happens. So it's that first day.
I always thought that was interesting too. Is it's the first day of winter, but we call it midwinter, and maybe that's because we're midway between that autumn equinox and the spring equinox. Time and a place for every season, but summer can be hard for me too, because extreme of temperatures, too cold, too hot, but like give me in that liminal space. Great. So I love what I do love about this time of year
Mm-hmm.
is the hunkering down, the
Mm-hmm.
fuzzy blankets, the coziness, so many snuggles. I'll tell you, I have a kid that's very
Oh,
snuggly,
yes, you
so
do.
we
And
snuggle
two
to
of
stay
them with gray
warm, and
snuggles.
yeah. See,
Yes.
cozy things on our feet, and staying in pajamas over the weekend if we don't have
Mm-hmm.
to be anywhere or go anywhere.
Yes, same. We have lots of cozy blankets on our couches. We all snuggle up. Um, it's just I do. I love that aspect of it, just cozying down, hunkering down, watching something fun on TV or a movie, or even just with the pulling up of the book, something. It's just nice. It's nice to have a break, a mental break, because you can't go outside. And same thing, I was again living in the same area you are in for many years, the extremes of hot and cold. Since I have shifted to more of the Bay Area, I get less of that heat in the summer, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how much I love that. It's like I don't want to go back if only for the weather shift. It still gets cold and rainy in the winter,
Yeah.
but it just not having that glaring heat. The older I get, it's a lot nicer
Yeah.
having a more consistent temperature across the board. But what about diving into this idea of Yule? We've talked about what we like about it, what winter
About
means
the
to
season.
us in the
But
season. So, what's the spiritual meaning of winter?
it's that inward journey. It's a slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people this time of year are pretty caught up in the social engagements and the hustle and bustle, but that's not my scene, baby.
Mm-hmm.
I really gravitate towards warm and cozy, even small group gatherings, great. And but also just it summer is high social for me with pride,
Mm-hmm.
summer solstice and stuff. And for winter solstice, to me, it's like no matter who you're with or if you're by yourself, it's willingness to just go within, spend time in the darkness, being a seed, inside its shell, and self reflection, and not needing to get away from being with myself, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and start unpacking some of the shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
It's For me, I think it's a very internal journey. I will hunker into a blanket cave
Mm-hmm.
and put on whatever in my head that's going to help me get into a meditative state. Sometimes it's meditation music, sometimes it'd be a guided meditation. It just depends on what mood I'm in, but just to give me that space of just like, so I just
Mm-hmm.
imagine, shadow work, facing the shadow.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense because again, summer, it's bold, as brash, is out there. Um, it's Leo season. It's Cancer, it's Leo season, that brightness that's
My
there.
birthday. Yeah.
And yeah, and winter is start of Capricorn season. It's that focused internal drive to do and go into something else. So it makes absolute sense that you go from the brightness to the inward, and that inward
Mm-hmm.
journey and that shadow work. And
My
that's
pattern.
the pattern and the idea of the darkness. The darkness, just something about the nature of it is the darkness is a shadow, as the shadow of the you get the reflection of the light of the moon, but it's the rotation of the earth around away from the sun, so we are in
Mm-hmm.
shadow from the sun. And that shadow work period is so important, and it's so much. You see all this sweetness and light, live in the light. And it's like, the thing is, you can't live in the light unless you're acknowledging the shadows. um, or you can't live long in the light without acknowledging the shadows. Or you don't become well rounded. You start becoming one
Or
or the
you become
other.
problematic,
Yeah,
to be fair.
yeah. I didn't quite want to say it. Thank you for saying that,
I
but yeah.
will.
But yeah,
I'm like, or you become problematic. That's the
too much light, you
positivity.
become problematic. Everything is about balance, and
Yeah.
that's the idea of the transitions. But yeah, the opposite ends of the pendulum, you can only swing so far before you got to start swinging back the other direction.
Yeah.
And having that shadow work and helping you kind of build and dig that seed, like you said, to plant that seed for what you want to go. So,
Making friends with the
mhm,
darkness. Like
mhm,
there are certain songs that I tend to play at this time of year, like The
mhm,
Sound of Silence, or I believe there's also a Disturbed song called Darkness. And
mhm.
yeah, I'm hearing it in my head there. I won't sing it for copyright purposes. You're welcome.
Right. No,
But
for me, same thing. I get a soundtrack, and
yeah.
it's a very specific soundtrack around Yule, actually, and winter solstice. And it was something that, again, growing up, there, my mom had this album, and it was called A Winter Solstice. And it was a
Mm.
compilation of, again, almost like meditative, new agey music. It was not generally her thing, but somehow she found it. And it would have like
And it
Pachelbel's
spoke to you.
Canon and a bunch of other instrumental, purely instrumental songs on it. And it spoke to me. So as an adult, I gravitated and found it was winter solstice and December. And so the
Oh.
two of them I will play. And it's just, again, it's soothing, it's meditative, and it just helps get me in that mindset to go deep and to start looking at what I want to do and where I want to go and go from there. And speaking of which, with that going someplace else and talking about the nature of the season, you touched on the idea of hustle and bustle, because there is still a lot of hustle and bustle around winter solstice. Christmas
Hmm.
is very popular again here in the US.
And a lot
And
of a lot of holidays have
mhm, and we'll
for a
touch on some of
multitude of yeah,
the different multitudes of holidays. But again, as
right.
kind of around here culturally, it's Christmas is both secular and Christian based. There's two aspects of it in the United States, as most of you will be familiar with, because again, most of our audience is primarily US. But there is that kind of secular, talking on the secular idea aspect of it for a moment, not the Christian aspect, but the secular aspect. It's celebrating, it's hanging out with friends, it's celebrating food, it's being with your people, whether that's your bio fam, your chosen fam, and usually exchanging gifts, um, sometimes going out caroling, looking at Christmas lights, lots of different kinds of things that you're doing that create new traditions or new fun things that you can share. So I think my question for you is, around that winter solstice time, around Christmas time, who are you celebrating with? Because as queer people, we don't necessarily, it's not always our bio fam.
Mhm.
Who you're celebrating with, and what are there aspects of it that really call to you on a secular level, rather than a spiritual level, though I can sometimes concede that sometimes the secular leads into the spiritual, so there is that too. But yeah, so what are you doing, and who are you celebrating with for you, Damona, around the Yule time, winter solstice, Christmas time era?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have children,
Mm-hmm,
so we do culturally engage in Christmas a little bit. Um, so there's that aspect of Christmas trees
mm-hmm,
and presents and all of that. Um, and gift giving, I think, is an art of love in and of
mm-hmm,
itself. Um, I get attached to things if they're a gift from people or
mm-hmm,
made by people I love and know and love, and like both of these necklaces that I'm wearing. One was made by somebody I know and love, and this was a gift from somebody I love. So things get sentimental value to this Cancerian when they're
mm-hmm,
gifted to me, and giving. Excuse me, and giving a gift for me, I think, is a sacred act of love. So
mm-hmm.
again, the secular going into the sacred, you already called me out
Right.
on it. It's all good. Because this is the whole, I know you and I love you well enough to know that this is a perfect gift to give. Now, do I love the whole like obligatory gift giving?
Mm-hmm,
I'm a little burnt out in my wise old age on that tradition. I
mm-hmm,
think that the consumerism part of it doesn't thrill me anymore. I try to sidestep it in a lot of ways. But yes, I do also love finding just the right gift that says, this will make you remember that you're loved
Mm-hmm.
and seen, to give to people. And I don't always manage to be able to do that. Or, handmade gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other thing that I love this time of year is baking, being able
Yes.
to bake and put, using the oven to warm the hearth and home,
Mm-hmm.
and the good smelling, so baked goods and gifting. um Again, that's for me could be an act of sacred love, in the sense that, who depending on who you're making it for, and knowing what their dietary restrictions are, very, like, whether they're like allergic to things or have like diabetes. So, and making something specifically with that in mind, I can
Mm-hmm.
be like an act of, you know the sacred but also secular.
Mm-hmm.
So, but tradition, who am I celebrating with? Obviously always with the kids and the fam. And I would also often, there's, for me, it's always like the secular holidays for the my fam, my kids, my spouse, and sometimes little visits here and there. But there's also Yule.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will get together with at least one or two, sometimes, you know whatever traditions we can continue or kick up, but like, just setting aside a time with witchy minded folk,
Mm-hmm.
queer folk, queer fam, and being able to, do whatever we end up doing. We'll end
Mm-hmm.
up planning something, like
Right.
a ritual of some kind, and sometimes we wing those rituals, and sometimes we plan them and write them out and stuff. But for me, a lot of it's burning
Mm-hmm.
candles or a Yule log, symbolically, traditionally. You can get different elements you can gather of wintry things, and bundle them together and make your like Yule log, and burn them in your hearth, or to
Mm-hmm.
spice the, like, cedar. And I this is something like we did years ago. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember what all we put in there, but um so yeah, just having little gatherings, and chosen family, and sharing food, sharing
Mm-hmm.
the light, burning away some, whatever needs to, be let go of, before we transition back towards the lighter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That last moment of darkness, honoring it for what it is, making friends with the darkness. So yeah, lots of different ways to celebrate the
Mm-hmm.
the crossover tradition. And making my own traditions has been a big thing in the,
Mm-hmm.
later part of my years.
Yes.
Not always
Yeah.
having to follow the secular traditions, or again, getting away from the idea of pre obligated,
Mm-hmm.
predestined. Yeah.
No, I understand. Same thing. Growing up, again, I grew up in a Catholic family, so Christmas was huge, and we would always go over to my grandparents on Christmas Day. We'd go over to one grandparents on Christmas Eve, the other grandparents on Christmas Day. There was always midnight mass. There was always Christmas church the next morning, all those kinds of things. And then
Mm. Wow.
I got away from that. Um, in my and started creating my own traditions and such. I would still celebrate Christmas and I would still go over to my family on Christmas Day. We'd have some sort of gift exchange, and especially when you're younger, there were lots of presents. But as I've become older and as I've stepped into, again, my queerness, my witchiness, all of those kinds of things, I started disassociating with Christmas a lot. I know it's still there, it's still a holiday. I will still go and visit my family a little bit to a smaller extent. But for me, Yule has become a lot more centric.
Yeah.
And because it's a different kind of idea. You're still celebrating, like you said, the return of the sun, sun versus son, in this case. But
I love
it's
the blending.
right. But there are things that I definitely found that I always loved. And the things that I loved about Christmas, even as a child, were the pagan things that were tenderly around it. I loved the Christmas tree. I
Oh
loved
yeah.
decorating the Christmas tree. I loved sitting there underneath the Christmas tree
Hmm.
for hours, just staring up at the lights and the shiny ornaments and all of those things, and making ornaments and reminding myself of the good times that we had when we would make ornaments. Or there was one
I
year
like
where I
acquiring a new ornament, or
Mhm,
sometimes picture ornaments, so
exactly.
that we have like the, oh, this from this year, oh, this is from this year, oh, or even just something that you just remember, oh, I acquired this when you were,
Hmm.
blah blah blah. I love acquire, yeah, but I also, yeah,
The
can
shiny
relate to
tree.
those
I have
shiny sparkly things.
it's the
The
dragon in me.
Christmas, going and seeing people's decorative
Hmm.
lights,
Yes.
um that's one of my most favorite times of the season, because I feel like not everybody participates, but
Hmm.
culturally a lot of people in my area tend to, when the light feels like it's kind of missing and we're longing for it, we kind of
Hmm.
sparkle, we add light and we sparkle the outside of our houses or homes and businesses, and it's just like kind of like that resiliency, a reminder of the
Hmm.
human species and the human spirit of like shining our own light, creating our own light,
Hmm.
and sharing that light.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
picking drives where you put on some of that really cool, tunes, whether
Hmm.
it's like traditional holiday music or like pagan,
Hmm.
winter season-y music, and then just go watching the sparkly lights and taking the
Hmm.
kids and let them have, fresh, dazzling experiences. And um, definitely there's merit to some of the old traditions.
Yes. And Chris is funny. Christmas music, I actually really love most Christmas music. It's I and again I hearken that back to, again, as a child, going Christmas caroling.
Mm-hmm.
Where we go caroling to a lot of the shut-ins at the church, and then we'd come back and we'd have a feast with hot cider and all that kind of stuff. But again, I love Christmas music because it brings me back to that nostalgia factor um, of it. So my favorites of actually the Christmas music tend to be the 40s, 50s, 60s crooners,
Mm-hmm.
the Frank
The old
Sinatras and the Dean
classics.
Martins and the old original classics. I cannot get enough of those. Not, not denying the misogyny and patriarchy of the eras and the times that were there, they made fabulous music. Santa
So,
Baby, the original Santa Baby by Eartha Kitt. Oh, I was obsessed with that song for
uh-huh,
so long.
I love that one.
But yeah, so
Growing up, it was Alvin and the Chipmunks
mm-hmm.
Christmas album for me for some reason. That and this other one that my mom had on her record,
Mm-hmm.
that I was obsessed with, which was, I mean, Conway Twitty and the Tweety Bird.
I
I was
like it.
obsessed with that album
We
as a kid.
had How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which also had a
Uh-huh.
bunch of other songs on it on a record. And then for whatever reason, my stepdad had on record, it was called Christmas Through the Years. It was a Time Life Classic series. And
Huh.
same thing, it had
Yeah.
all of these songs, and it had other songs that we had never heard of before that became family cult classics, like Christmas in Killarney, because we've got Irish roots,
Uh-huh.
and other things. That was just, it was really fun. And I cannot sing that song to this day without singing it with an Irish accent.
Oh.
But yeah, it's really great, and it's just that music aspect. And again, I love music, and so I think
Yeah.
having the music aspect that really harkens back and speaks to my soul.
Same.
And then the sparkling of the tree, the when we had
Yes.
fireplaces, the cracking of the fire, all that was almost as important, if not more important to me than the actual gift giving. Because I'm with you, I love giving gifts, but I love giving gifts when they're not obligated. Like you said, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes at Christmas time, as a child, yes, I want I want the toys, and you want the fun things, and you don't see it about it, and you look at it and you get like sweaters or something. And it's like, ugh, I wanted the Barbie, I didn't want the sweater, right?
Now I want the sweater.
Now, as an adult, and as I got older, I started much more appreciating the value of a really nice, cozy sweater and socks. Socks and
Yeah.
mittens and scarves and all those things are fantastic, and I love them now. But again, it's the same thing. It's less about the consumerism. And that's the one thing that I
Yeah.
do like as adults. We've stopped in my family pretty much giving gifts. My mom will still get us something, but it's usually like a massage gift card or something like else. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of a service. It's less of a physical, tangible thing and more of a memory, or more of something that can be used as self-care. Or in my case, oftentimes I'll give bottles of wine because my family loves wine. So that's something that I know that they will enjoy, but it's not heavy consumerism
You
aspects
know,
of it. Now, the kids still get toys. If you're under like 16 or even under like 12, you're pretty much getting toys. 12 to 16, 12 to 18, you're kind of getting whatever. And then after that, it's you don't really get gifts anymore, but we'll give candy or we'll give other things that could be edible and less stuff
you
in my
you talk
family.
you were talking about gifting experiences, and it
Mm-hmm.
made me think about some of like newer traditions that we
Mm-hmm.
share.
Yes.
And just because you so often has, or we have both like gifted one another experiences
Mm-hmm.
centered around going to see a holiday drag show
Yes.
together. And for several years that was the thing that we did, even to the
Yes.
point where for the year that everything was, the world was shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and they put it on TV, and we still watched it and gabbed about it, and the Ben de
Exactly.
la Creme and Jinx
Jinx Monsoon.
Monsoon's holiday
Yes.
special, which I still will go look for every year. I like hope
Mm-hmm.
it still stays streaming
Yeah, I
because
hope so. I know their shows are sold out this year, so it didn't make it, but I would like to see if we
uh
can find a streaming version of it because it's such an amazing show. For those of you, again,
I keep
recommend.
hoping that they'll make more or
Yes,
something
they're just two
else.
amazing, delightful drag queens,
Just
which
more
we
TV.
love.
Yeah,
But
definitely
yeah,
like big fans of their media and their
yes.
approach to their art. Yeah.
But yeah, but that again, gifting of experiences and especially experiences I can do with other people. So
Yeah.
doing that with you,
Bondings.
the experience of going is fun, but it's just as much fun being it and doing it with you rather than
Yeah.
doing it by myself. Um, Oftentimes, like sometimes we'll get theater tickets or
Yeah.
in now as a family for again for Christmas, we my grandmother still periodically she's going on 80, she just turned 89. She's still doing
Ooh.
Christmas. It's not as it used to be the center point and the highlight, and now it's not. There's a number of different reasons for that. She's gotten extremely conservative in her Christian
Uh,
Catholic views as she's gotten older. I have not, and it's just it's hard. It's a lot harder. The queerer I've got, the older I've got, the harder it is to do Christmas over there. But my partner's family is very open and fun, and they would oftentimes would go see a movie, and it was really nice to just get out and get like 20 people together and go see a movie together. And that to me is just a different kind of fun and a different kind of Christmas tradition. But when we go back to Yule, as I've gotten older, I've gotten out of the Christmas phase. So it's now Christmas is more like it feels almost more of an obligation than the joy I had as a child.
yeah.
Whereas for me, if I want that joy and connection of family, it actually turns out to be more of a Thanksgiving thing now for me because
Mm.
I'm going to a different family member's household. And it's just more about the joy and open and communication and the laughter and the being there together and not about gifts and not about the other stuff. It's really more of
Mm-hmm.
that feeling I used to get as a child without the stress about presents and stuff. So to me, Thanksgiving has replaced that emotional connection with my family rather than
Uh,
Christmas. But like you said with Yule, as I have become and found my own chosen family, my queer family, my witchy family, I started creating my own Yule traditions. And
mm-hmm.
this again started with that first year of me coming out of the broom closet as I was getting a divorce and everything else. I had a very good friend of mine, Diana. She said we should just do something. We should just write stuff down and let it go. And that kind of started a tradition where literally on the evening of Yule, and I open this to all of my friends or family or anyone who wants to come by, throughout the course of the day, I would just sit and I would just write. I would just write out all the things that I hated about the last year, all the things that bothered me, all the things and the frustrations. And just it didn't need to be sentences. It was just stream of consciousness, just writing. And then we burned it. Literally ripped it into shreds and burned it in a cauldron. And that releasing of that was so incredibly important and it was so freeing to do. And I love that idea of that tradition on Yule because you're that's what exactly what you're doing is you're starting a new cycle of the sun with that new
Mm-hmm.
rebirth of the sun. So let's get rid of all the old stuff that's holding you back, weighing you down. Write it down so you can get it out, not just speaking, but write it down that gets it out in a physical way. burning it, it's another that kinetic expression of watching it literally dissolve into ash and then blow away. And it's really incredibly psychologically freeing, and it just helps you breathe easier, and then it helps me go into the next phase with a much lighter heart. And again, that starts that optimism. Okay, I've got a minute more of sunlight tonight than I did the night before. So that's one of those things that I do religiously now and have for the last 7 or 8 years, of just, doesn't matter what it is, I'm going to do that on Yule, even if it's just me, though I open it up again to anyone else and my friends and family. If you want to stop by and do this, this is what I'm doing. It's here, but I acknowledge that it's not going to be for everyone, and it happens on a different night of the year for everyone, so it's not always going to be on a weekend. And so it's just, people can't make it, but there have been times that I've had friends come over and do that, and I really appreciate those who want to do that and share that, because it's just that cathartic experience.
I
And I put
remember
on good music and stuff in the background too, that's soothing.
I remember having done this with you at least once or twice, the writing and the burning. And then I remember we have burned, artwork together. And I know traditionally we paint art we have had a tradition where we paint art in bulk that's for, kind of, it's a long story, but it's for the year, and then you burn it at Samhain. But there have definitely been times where we've delayed the burning and ended up burning it at Yule. And it's still like, oh, what's in the window?
Right, it's timing.
Right. Yes. So I remember, having those sacred moments, and being able to share some of those with you, and hope to in the future.
Absolutely.
Make the trek.
It does. It makes that difference. And I love that idea of, as we are witches, as we are pagan, as we are non-traditional spiritualists, but also as we are queer and identifying as queer, we are outside the norm, which means we have that freedom to make our own traditions. We have that freedom to break those things that don't serve us anymore and do the things that do. So if, again, like you said, love the drives of Christmas lights, that's a common thing. It doesn't matter if it's not tied to a spirituality, but it has a spiritual connection for how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the idea of that pumpkin spice latte. If you enjoy it and it makes you feel good, why? It doesn't matter if it's basic or whatever. It's just something that appeals to you, and that's a really good thing to do and share with people. So that ability to break old traditions, create new ones, I love it.
Also, I always think of Yule kind of kicking off the holiday season. And I know there's like a cluster of holidays that we can talk about. But it also is clustered in with our calendar New Year. Too. All up and around there. So a lot of that, what you were speaking of, like the letting go and the wrapping up and just like kind of summarizing the year and, readjusting sails, for me as a numerologist, it's also that cycle, the personal year cycle shift that people are so when I do that year reflection, that inner work, a lot of times I'm looking at it through the lens of the numerologist in me, and I'm saying, okay, what did I accomplish this 7 personal year? Okay, did I meet those goals? Could I have done that better? Okay, what did I learn from all of this? What was the takeaway? What's the lesson? What's the overall themes for the year? Great. Now how do I gear up? Because I know that I'm shifting from the 7 to the 8. And I want to make sure that I can rise to the occasion. The archway from doing that at New Year's to, reflect on your past year and move on to the next, that then tends to gateway into making a list of all the past years and what their personal year cycle numbers were, and then looking at what happened in that year and being like, wow, it's amazing how all that meets up. So we burn candles, we burn Yule logs, we light and decorate with lights, we light bonfires, we set intentions, we plan rituals, we honor the sun, and some folk have traditions where they will stay up from sunset to sunrise. Have you ever done that?
I not at
I'm a
Yule.
cat and I like my sleep.
I am a cat. I like my sleep. Um, I have stayed up and watched the sunrise and from the night before. Honestly, I generally do that at Burning Man. There's almost
Oh.
always one day I'll either wake up and catch a sunrise or I'll stay up all night and watch a sunrise. So to me, that's where I will tend to do that, less at
Mm-hmm.
Yule. But I
Mm-hmm.
understand the appeal of it and
Mm-hmm.
why on Yule it is a thing for a lot of people to break that cycle and do that, stay awake for sunrise. Because again, it's a spiritual moment watching the sun crest the horizon. It truly
Which is
is.
always like that like moment of silence of just like being in awe of the natural cycles and the fact that
Mm-hmm.
the sun does return each day and
Mm-hmm.
helps us get through this thing called life in its
Mm-hmm.
own way, and the sun being such a radiant energy source,
Mm-hmm.
and such a necessary part of life here on the rock called earth.
Right. And that's one thing again, regardless of your flavor of spirituality, it's
We're
just
all
something
living
that's yeah, it's something
through
worth
these
doing at
cycles.
least once. Catch a sunrise, catch a sunset, and really be in that moment. That was the other thing that I did enjoy and do enjoy about the winter months is currently in my job I have to commute in 2 days a week and I have to get up early. I start work at 7:15 in the morning.
Mm,
So I would leave my house in the dark and oftentimes the sun was coming up as I was driving in. So there was also being able to see some of those glorious sunrises
mm,
driving in. It aside from the crankiness, like I said, this cat likes to sleep, but
same.
the crankiness of being up that early, it really is beautiful
Oh,
to see
yeah,
the sun cresting over the horizon. It
yeah.
really truly is. So we've got staying awake for sunrise. We've talked about burning the old to make way for the new, whether that's again through Yule logs, through writing things down and burning those traditions. Um, Another big one, food. Like I said, again, my culture, my family has always been food centric. It's
Hmm.
just in
Tell me more,
myself.
kitchen witch.
I know. I seriously. And it's so funny. You talked about you mentioned it and then I'm going, this is your kitchen witch showing, honey. This is your kitchen witch showing.
Oh, well,
Because you mentioned and brought up food
sometimes,
earlier. But again,
sometimes,
there
yeah.
is that. Sometimes there is that
Well,
idea of
feeding people can be a sacred act of love.
absolutely. Yes, yes, your kitchen witch showing. But
You
yes, no, it's real because food is a sacred act of love. It's sharing, it's connection. And like we've talked about in other episodes that talk about kitchen witchery, it's especially when you're making it with intention. You're making baked goods to give as gifts to your family because maybe you can't afford lots of presents, but you can afford butter, sugar, flour. And those are the basics for a lot of things. And it helps stretch, and you can make big batches of cookies or cakes or something else that can
and it
go
makes your home
out.
smell really
It
good
makes your home smell good. There's very few times that people will not accept gifts of food. Um,
when you trust the
it-
source.
when you trust the source, exactly. I don't generally recommend walking into a stranger's door and handing them a cake, but again, knowing the source, and there is it's always been a thing again in that kind of lexicon and the stereotype is made with love. My food is made with love. There's grandma's cooking was always best because it was made with love. And
Yeah,
there is that ability that comes through, especially in the holidays when you're sharing that kind of stuff that you can
like those magical potions that you imbibe with
mhm,
intention. Like, here, nourish your body on this love that I've made for you. It's
exactly. And my
delicious.
well wishes for a prosperous and new year.
Kept saying there are like so many different winter traditions across multiple
Hmm.
cultures, and so many of them are have this weird like overlap or commonality of,
Hmm.
the rebirthing of the lights or the festival of lights, or uh doing something with the light, keeping the
Hmm.
light, sharing of the light or the energy, or so what have you learned about, what are some of the different traditions that you're aware of, and what have you learned that are kind of common themes that you
Hmm.
can pick out, and then also like the beautiful cultural set, differences, and we're again with the disclaimer that we don't speak on authorities of other cultures, but I
Right.
think it's fair to be aware and to mention and to, you know, get curious about other cultures
Mhm.
and what their traditions are. And I am a big picture, like, oh, what are the commonalities, what are the
Mhm.
overlapping themes, like, because I think there's so much wisdom in seeing how everybody interprets this one
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah, it's that universal truth of the human experience, regardless of whether
Yes.
you are what faith you believe in. There is that, again, that idea as we are at a primal level. When the dark comes, we're scared, so we want to illuminate. And what can we do? And at the darkest point is winter. So there are so many different types of festivals, again, across cultural traditions that speak to it. So I have a few that I found that kind of mention it that I'll talk about. And again, like you said, we are not experts on this. I'm not going to discuss details about any of them because I can't speak to these traditions, but I just was really fascinated across seeing how varied it was as we're going through. Stereotypical USA is Christmas, which
Mm-hmm.
again, there it's a Christianity based faith, celebration of the birth of Jesus. You're sharing gifts, you're sharing food, the wise man giving the gifts. That's the idea kind of behind the Christmas idea of sharing and celebration. In Judaism, it's probably the second most common. You're familiar with Hanukkah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the festival of lights. It's the lighting of the menorah. It's the celebration of oil that should have lasted one day, lasting 7 nights. Again, lighting the darkness beyond when it should. And I know it's not a huge celebration in the in Judaism, but from at least from what I have been told, but it is a celebration still at the same time in this nature of the winter. And that's a lot of these stars. These may not be
And the
huge
lights like
celebrations, but
holding,
they're still
yeah,
light centric
sacredness.
celebration kind of traditions.
Yeah.
After that, Kwanzaa, that is an
Mm-hmm.
African celebration of African heritage and culture. And again, they have candles. It's called a kinara. It's the lighting of the kinara. And each of the candles represents a different tenet of faith, of strength, self compassion, faith, unity, all those kinds of things. So, again, this is celebration of lights and lighting of candle and that illumination that comes through.
Wow.
There is, and I apologize if I butcher the pronunciation of this, Chaumas. It's the Kalasha people of Pakistan, where they do ritual baths for purification, singing, chanting, a torchlight procession, dancing
Wow.
around bonfires and feasts. So again, that's a very specific people of a particular country, but again, that idea of
Uh-huh.
light. You've got Diwali, which is Hindu, which is the holiday of lights. You've got Body Day in Buddhism, which in this case, your decoration of a tree that symbolizes different paths to nirvana. So you decorate with lights and beads and colors, similar to the way you made for Saturnalia or Christmas, with the idea of the Christmas tree. Again,
Huh.
lights, colors,
Uh-huh.
different paths to enlightenment
Now,
here.
and you may not know, but like, do they use like evergreens, like
Ficus, ficus tree,
ficus? What
generally.
is that, a evergreen?
It's not an evergreen. It's
Oh,
I
okay,
believe a
interesting.
deciduous, but it's like I believe what I had read again from the sources that are so
Yeah.
expert. Thank you, Google.
Okay, so they have
But
a specific kind of tree that they use.
generally a ficus tree. So it's something that's a little bit more tropical because again that
Oh,
idea
yeah.
of where Asia is centered, there's
Yeah.
not as many evergreen trees
Right. Okay.
in that area, so that wouldn't
Yeah.
be an evergreen as the base behind it.
Interesting.
There's Dongji, which is Chinese. And same thing, it's an end of harvest celebration where you're sharing food,
Oh.
sharing gifts. It's not a major holiday, but it's that sharing celebration of food. There's also St. Lucia's Day or St. Lucia's Day, which is Scandinavian. And that is a festival of lights, again, where girls dress up in white dresses with red sashes and wear a wreath of candles on their head and then celebrate
Mm.
the saint as they progress. Because again, that celebration of a light and illumination. So different, so many different cultures across the globe have some sort of celebration or festival or day of remembrance or something that deals with that transition of light. and illumination and coming into the light and celebrating the end of the darkness and moving forward into something else. And I think that's just incredibly, it just speaks to us again as a global population.
Even like taking in food and feeding people is that idea of like that food is energy for your body. It is light, and you are taking it into yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Making friends with the darkness, and also realizing that the light is ever present and we are never without it.
And nourishing yourself is what helps you walk forward and progress.
Such beautiful traditions.
Yes.
Beautiful overlapping themes. Such wonderful ways that the human experiences have learned to mark this sacred turning of the wheel of the rotation of the earth and the sun, the dance that we do through space. I think it's lovely. And we're getting probably close to wrap up time, but didn't you have like a gift that you were going to offer us?
I did. I thought that'd be kind of fun because, again, both you and I are intuitive readers, generally through tarot and through other mediums. And I thought it would be fun because we are releasing this on Yule to give a reading from a couple of different decks. And again, I'll pull the cards because I've got them in front of me, and then you can hear mine and Damona's interpretations, and then we'll read from the authors. But the two decks that I have, one is an oracle deck, one is a tarot deck, so you can kind of get a feel for both of them because we both read on both. It's not, we're not tarot specific or one or the other. We both do both types of decks. The first one is the Seasons of the Witch Yule edition. So we had one from Mabon. At least I did one from Mabon. You can find it on my TikTok. This particular author is working on building one for every season of the wheel.
And these are oracles.
These are oracle cards. Okay. So these are oracles here. Lorraine Anderson, Juliet Diaz. So I'm going to pull an oracle from the Seasons of the Witch. And then I have the Yuletide Tarot from Christopher Hughes. Yay! And we've talked about Christopher Hughes before. We both love him. Absolutely. He created a Yuletide deck. So I thought it'd be fun to pull from that as well. And the way that I read oracle, or the way that I tend to do intuitive readings, is when I pull cards, I generally pull from 2 or 3 different decks at a time. And oracles give me my goal, and the tarot gives me my path. So I was going, if it's okay with you, I was going to do it that kind of interpretation as here's the goal for the next year. And the tarot reading will be the path that we need to keep in mind to walk as we're working towards that goal.
Okay. So with that, your tarot spread said, can we kind of pull as like a message for the Yule season, and like how do we keep the light alive in ourselves, like kind of tying into that idea of the light, and bringing in a message for the Yule season, for the fall, transition of the years, and to keep as the keepers of the light, keeping the light alive.
I like that. I like that. I like that as a center focus.
What is the goal, and how do we get there?
All right.
What's the path?
So our goal is to keep what do we need to know to keep the light alive? And I usually go and shuffling, and I'll cut some of this out until I hear a card flip. The card that was pulled is Ceremony.
Ooh.
So holding it up.
Well then, what are we doing this Yule? Ceremony, apparently.
Ceremony. I call upon those heralds of winter, dimming light for better sight. Hear thy praise spilling from thy lips, a spell I'll cast for thy spirits within me.
Dimming light for better sight jumped the heck out at me.
Dimming light for better sight. For thy spirits in me, a spell I'll cast.
I like it. I like it. Look at that. Beautiful.
So, that message, connecting to the spirit, looking at dimming lights for better sight.
We're going to need pictures of these to put on our Instagram.
We'll do so. So Ceremony is our oracle.
Okay. There's our goal for keeping the light alive. Maybe that's why we do have traditions and make new traditions, and that traditions come up a lot at this time of year is because it's the ceremonies that we do that help mark the passing of the seasons that make us feel like we're continuing on a forward progression in life.
Absolutely. And our path, the 9 of Canes.
Oh.
Which would be the 9 of Swords.
Ceremony. I mean, I did say that Yule is making you do make friends with the darkness, which also includes some of that shadow work and unpacking. Is it this traditionally like the nightmare?
It's to me, 9 of Swords I read as anxiety.
Oh, okay.
I almost always read
Keeps
9 of
you
Swords
awake
as
at night.
anxiety. It keeps you awake at night. You're trying to think about it. Or in this case, it's like the 9 of Canes is that you're trying to think about all the. I read this one the way the picture looks, and again I'll hold it a little bit closer. Is he's sitting there trying to calculate what he's going to spend on Christmas for the family and friends and everything else, and not seeing what is real, because his partner is sleeping right there beside him, sound asleep, and he's stressing over all these things that really have no meaning about the actual ceremony, about the actual connection to spirit.
I think this really is hitting on what we were talking about earlier, where there's the motions that you can go through. You can go through these traditional motions of celebrating the season, or you can get into the magic of the ceremony and the sacredness of actually like stopping and acknowledging the cycles of the season.
Yes. That's what I'm getting from these 2 cards.
Wow. Well, that's a way to drive home a point, I guess.
Thank you, Tarot.
You're welcome. That's the gift that keeps on giving. But I like it. I do like you're mentally exhausting yourself over things that aren't sacred. Get into the sacredness of it.
Yes. Find that connection to spirit and worry less about the material aspect of it.
That is a beautiful note to wrap things up on. And yes, I did intend the pun wrap like a present. You're welcome. But also, I would ask that if any of our listeners have any new and or old traditions that they love to engage in, look forward to engaging in, and or planning to engage in for this time of the year, share that with us. Send us an email, give us some comments, because we love hearing from you guys and knowing what's going on in your lives and how you guys celebrate. So it expands our world and we have a broader perspectives, because I just really think that that's very important for us to not just be talking at you, but also be listening. And learning what other traditions people have and make.
And I love that, because again, it's you hear bits and pieces that may spark you or spark your own ideas. And I love that. I never want to stop learning. I want to keep celebrating and finding new ways and digging deeper. And I love we read, I promise you, we read every comment that comes through. And we do. We appreciate every single one.
So with that said, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening to the Queer Witch Project. And if you like what you hear, make sure you give us a like. That means a lot to us. If you're just new, follow along, subscribe, turn the notifications on, and leave us some comments. And, let's talk more about what your traditions are.
Yes. And if there's a topic you'd want to know more about, or an episode that you'd like to suggest, leave us, or you can contact us at the Queer Witch Project at gmail.com, or you can find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle at Queer Witch Project. We upload twice a month. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.
Bye. Happy Yule.